I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Well, I'll tell you what, that's one of those words of Jesus that, I don't know, my life full of qualifications, right? If I have it, I give it to you. I don't know if I can live up to that phrase of Jesus. Can we as a church live up to that phrase of Jesus? Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Kind of a goal for us all to live by. To follow in that way Jesus, who in the 6th chapter of the Gospel of John just got done feeding 5,000 hungry people on a hillside before this quote. It is the first of the 7 I am sayings of Jesus in the Gospel of John. It's kind of like a literary technique that the Gospel uses to show who Jesus is. In the first church that I served in Illinois, they were St. John's Church, and so the windows each depicted a different I am saying of Jesus, and this one had all kinds of bread in the stained glass. Because it's a universal theme, and there are so many different ways that we can think of bread, in material ways, in natural ways, in spiritual ways, in ways of our income, bread winners. But this is the first I am saying in the Gospel of John, because it's a staple. Bread is life. It alludes to our bodies, it alludes to our spirits, it alludes to communion. Now I want you to think for a minute. You know, it's important for you to experience Scripture. If someone asked you what it feels like to be hungry, how would you answer that question? Think back to a time when you were really hungry. And what did that do to you? How did it change you? Think about that moment. Go back to what that's like to be hungry. Maybe you start with your stomach, right? You kind of get that feeling in your stomach. Kind of a queasy feeling. Maybe kind of a hunger pang, you might call it. But then some of you also might talk about how your blood sugar drops when you don't eat. For some people, that's a serious consequence of not eating. Sometimes you get a headache. Sometimes you get shaky. Have you ever got shaky if you don't eat? You might not think straight when you're hungry. Matter of fact, that's one of the sayings in recovery groups. Hungry, angry. It makes you mentally dull. We often use that as an excuse. Next time you can't come up with something, you say, I have to do it. You don't feel like doing anything. You don't have any energy. Some of us in church have noticed the embarrassing moment when our stomach growls. Notice that? How do you experience that here today? These are human beings around you. But no matter what your station in life, your body needs food regularly in order to function properly. And if you don't have that food, there are all sorts of things that begin to go wrong and make you not feel right. There's a wonderful book that I hope everybody reads at some point. It's called Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. And it's actually the history of civilization. And his theory is that bread changed the world because we became an agricultural society. We were then able to plan for the future and store our food and our flour for a time ahead. So we began to think about things in the future and to plan ahead. With the advent of agriculture and bread came the ability to store food. People had free time for spiritual things. mainline Christianity to say, well, that's a spiritual thing. Our daily bread is a little magazine that I read regularly and I get my spiritual inspiration. But maybe in Jesus' day, he really meant, give us today our daily bread. Help us to have the things that we need. We're beginning to take a hard look at hunger in America. And here at Trinity, we don't look too far. Because we know people who every day are focused on what they eat. Last year alone, we served 18,000 breakfasts here at Trinity in our morning program. And it affected not only the people who had bread to eat, but also the bread that was provided by people to eat. Students from the College of Worcester, because of what they experienced here in service, many of them changed their majors into human service fields. We have two of those folks that are in grad school right now. One in Chicago, who's studying government policy on supplying food, and another in Pittsburgh, who after a year-long internship at the Akron Food Bank is looking into food insecurity issues. Whenever you serve and whenever you answer that question, whoever comes to me will never go hungry, it means a lot of things. Jesus began by feeding 5,000 people in a field that day. But we also can't forget Mother Teresa, who said, as India experiences great material poverty, so in the same proportion, America suffers from great spiritual poverty. What if we use instead of the word poverty, hunger? America suffers from great spiritual hunger. Those two words, in the same proportion. People are dying spiritually. People are sick because they don't have a message of hope, because they don't have a goal for living. We have stress, anxiety, lack of sense of community. I am the bread of life, and no one who comes to me will ever go hungry. There's a spiritual hunger. I want you to think about this. You think about people you know. Some of the symptoms of not eating. The symptoms of loneliness. The symptoms of not having any ambition to do anything. The symptom of being afraid of the world. And may God give us eyes to see the spiritual hunger in our midst. Maybe we need to begin to research spiritual insecurity. And despite the fact that we live in an age of technological connection, people today report greater levels of loneliness than in any previous generation, because they're eating the bread that does not satisfy. So it's important for us to invite, to connect, to teach, and to send. The great hymn, one of my favorite hymns at the beginning today, Guide Me, O my great Jehovah. They changed the word Jehovah into Redeemer for us today. But you get the sense of it. I like that great line. Pilgrim through this barren land. And as pilgrims, we need to recognize our spiritual hunger that overtakes us. And we need to recognize the symptoms just as surely as material hunger. We always ask ourselves, and life of the church, we want to be able to say, if we could do anything that we wanted to do, what would we do? We think that way in worship now. Why can't we think that way in the community? If we could do anything that needed to be done, what would we do? What kind of a world would you want to live in? What kind of a community do you want to live in? Well, it's a community, definitely, where people are fed and to say very clearly to the world that everyone deserves a place at the table. And in this world, there are many places where people are excluded for one reason or another. And we need to be dedicated to that proposition that Christ included everyone, with an underline under everyone. We would live in a world where there were no prisons, where people are free. We would live in a world where there is no violence, where people are safe. We would live in a world where no one is lonely, because everyone belongs. May God give us the eyes to see the hungers in our midst. There's a great line in the Beatitudes from Jesus, and I'm sure that he intended us to be pointed toward it when we read this passage. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. What drives us toward Jesus? It's a hunger. It's a spiritual hunger for a different world. It's a spiritual hunger for change. It's a spiritual hunger for justice. Because we want the world to be different. Because you want your life to be different. Because in Jesus we see that we have an opportunity to change. Reflect on